Am I on a hunger strike? Where the hell are my pancakes?
Are you trying to choke me to death? You forgot cutties.
Ah, crap, I'm all syrupy. Bathies!
I knew from the moment I saw the announcement trailer for Velma that it was going to be a giant trash fire of epic proportions, and it still managed to disappoint me with how god-awful the actual show turned out. I've been seeing a lot of discussion surrounding the show lately and thought to myself, maybe I'll let the rest of the internet handle this one. At least that was my initial reaction. But then I remembered the Dead Space remake doesn't come out for another week and I had nothing else to do, so I decided to watch the first 2 episodes on HBO Max out of curiosity. And now, all I want is a time machine to get back the time I feel was stolen from me just for wanting to acknowledge that this thing even exists. I haven't seen an animated show this horrible in a very, very long time. And it's not just for surface level reasons either. I know there's a lot of people who want to talk about the race washing of the characters they did as a joke, or how cute the show thinks it is with its super meta commentary on television tropes and internet culture while failing miserably and making you cringe out of existence. You don't get to make these kinds of jokes when you have this little self-awareness in regards to the quality of your product. The actual reason this show sucks is that it's just very badly written. I know I don't talk about it a lot, but I happen to like Scooby-Doo quite a bit. So it's no surprise this show rattled me a little, so let's talk about why I hate it so much. First off, they made the characters completely unrecognizable, removing them of any identity or familiarity with fans. They're completely devoid of any personality and turned into a bunch of obnoxious one-dimensional stereotypes. Whether it's Velma being a pretentious narcissist, Daphne being a stuck-up bully, Shaggy being an unappealing nerd, or Fred being... Oh my lord, can we take a moment to talk about what the fuck they've done to Fred in this show? So the idea is that he's supposed to be this self-absorbed idiot with a privileged life since he has rich parents, with some low self-esteem due to daddy issues and slow puberty. That in itself is not a bad idea. It can work with the right amount of care put into it. Instead, they decide to write Fred off as a walking punchline. He's an incompetent buffoon, constantly making a fool of himself and completely incapable of doing anything by himself. He's a 3-year-old in a man's body, and trust me, it's a lot harder to watch than I made it sound. And forgive me if this is just a me thing, but I find it very suspicious that the only character written to be like this also happens to be the only one of the main Scooby-Doo gang that wasn't race swapped. Not only is this an extremely poor taste, it doesn't even work as a joke. Nothing about this is funny, so what's the point of portraying Fred as this unappealing, unbearable man-child? I'll tell you what the point was: to annoy the shit out of me. Fred in the original cartoons was a positive role model. He was a genuine guy with an upbeat personality who was capable and confident. But here, he makes me want to rip my eyes out of their sockets and rupture my eardrums to get away from having to deal with him. Fred is so obnoxious and unpleasant to be around, and it makes me feel horrible for fans of the character, knowing that they're staring in horror seeing their boy being portrayed in such a god-awful light. Every one of the main characters is either bland, annoying, horrible, or some combination of all three. Literally, the first thing Velma does is dress up as a killer and hit Daphne across the locker room with a cane. And when Daphne says she could have killed her, she replies with, "I guess I didn't try hard enough." Wow, what a brilliant way to get me to fall in love with your protagonist. Even the other characters are either dumb, phoned in, or not very helpful, such as Velma's dad and stepmom being neglectful idiots, or Daphne's lesbian parents being incompetent officers who shoot an unarmed teenager in his house or taser kids in high school without a warrant. But trust me when I say that the characters are far from the show's biggest problem. Did I mention this takes place during high school? Oh yeah, we're pulling off that repetitive crap. This is apparently supposed to be an origin story featuring the Scooby Gang showing us how they got together and stuff. The same thing we've seen in dozens of other incarnations of the show. And on top of that, it takes place in good old high school. Making this show an origin story is already unoriginal because of how badly played out it is. But high school? Really? You're gonna make this one set during high school? You're practically asking for your show to be a monotonous, cliche-filled, trope-infested mess. I'd specify which stereotypes, tropes, and cliches are featured here, but I wouldn't waste time doing that because chances are you already figured out what they are. I'm serious. Name the first couple of tired high school cliches that come to your head, and it's very likely that it's in this show. It's so trite and creatively bankrupt, like they put no effort into this idea whatsoever. I'm willing to bet you any amount of money that you can go on fanfiction.net and you would find a story about the origins of the Scooby Gang with more thought and imagination put into it, and it only gets worse from there. Velma is a collection of repetitive dialogue, terrible story pacing as a result of ham-fisted, unfunny comedy, and needlessly mean-spirited humor. There's also a lot of moments of sudden out-of-place gore because when you think Scooby-Doo, you definitely think of dismemberment and slicing people's heads open. This is the kind of thing Family Guy would do as a gag, and yet they're trying to make it into a serious setting and have it be the tone of the show. The original Scooby-Doo cartoon was lighthearted and campy, with moments of sincerity between the characters. This incarnation of Scooby-Doo is the furthest you can possibly be from a recognizable adaptation of the source material. This one tries to be edgy and adult with all the check marks you can think of. Calling someone a slut at their funeral, a whole bunch of out-of-place profanity, cheap shock value, and vulgar sex jokes. Oh, isn't that sweet? Another adult animated series with vulgar sex jokes and scenes of crass nudity. You know, because we haven't had enough of those yet. Not to mention their abysmal use of tell don't show. You know, one of the top things that guarantees your visual storytelling won't be interesting, having everything straight up explained to the audience instead of conveyed through natural dialogue or character interaction because the writers have zero faith in your intelligence whatsoever. There's this one scene with Velma explaining her backstory to Fred, and he literally says the following: "Not only am I emotionally hooked, but now I understand the personal stakes of your journey." And this is the only moment of tell don't show that I want to go into. Not because I'm lazy, but because there's so many examples. Oh, and did I also mention there's a disgusting romanticizing of abuse in this show? Yeah, we clearly demonstrated a lot of animosity and homicidal tendencies between Velma and Daphne in just these 2 episodes alone, so let's have them hook up out of nowhere. What the hell is this trash? Velma and Daphne are shown to thoroughly loathe each other throughout these 2 episodes, and there's no romantic chemistry between them whatsoever. And now, all of a sudden, they're a couple. Oh yeah, that's a great message to teach people. How love and affection is shown through neglecting your feelings and homicidal violence. It's like they got a group of Raylos from Twitter to write this garbage. And the thing that just makes this show so terrible is how badly it understands what Scooby-Doo is. Scooby-Doo is supposed to be a lighthearted slice-of-life series, focusing on the importance of people from different backgrounds working together to solve problems. It helped provide a wholesome message about friendship and cooperating within a group. Sure, it was campy and the characters were sort of one-dimensional, but there was also a sense of heart and sincerity to it. Regardless of what version of Scooby-Doo you were watching, every incarnation of the show understood this. Velma is what happens when you get a spiteful Scooby-Doo hater and pay them millions of dollars to make a show about Scooby-Doo. Everything about this show is vindictive and insulting to the source material, with no narrative appeal or redeeming qualities. And I just want to know, why was this garbage even made in the first place? That is a question I want a legitimate answer to. This piece of shit was animated, voice acted, drafted, edited, produced, greenlit, written, and finally put on a multi-million-dollar streaming service without a single person taking the time to ask, why? Who was this made for? Who would actually like it? In what dimension of insane lunacy would this show possibly be considered enjoyable, let alone a television show of quality? It certainly isn't for Scooby-Doo fans because the writing reeks of bitterness towards fans. It can't be for newcomers because I'd imagine this would just disinterest them from checking out other versions of the show. It's definitely not for kids given all the crass nudity and vulgar sex jokes, and I can't imagine any adult with more than 2 brain cells liking it because of how infantile and mindless the writing is. Mindy Kaling is a grotesque person for thinking any of this is acceptable, and she needs to be lobotomized with a pickaxe and a brick. Everyone who worked on this thing and helped bring it to life should be ashamed for having anything to do with it. And I don't want to see anyone in the comments saying something like, oh, you're just giving them what they want, you're hate watching the show and drawing attention to it. Well, you know what? I don't care. At least I'm doing my part in letting people know what a vile piece of trash it is. Velma is one of those things that should not, under any circumstances, have been made because nothing good would ever come out of its creation. It's not subverting anyone's expectations because everyone collectively guessed it was going to be awful when the first trailer was released. And they were right. It completely defiles and uproots everything Scooby-Doo fans are familiar with, turning this show into a giant middle finger to anyone who ever invested time in any part of this franchise. It attacks just about every group of people who are aware of its existence, with zero respect towards its viewers. Just the fact that there's a scene in which catchphrases from the original show are portrayed as unlawful drugs is a pretty good summarization of the whole experience. It has zero appeal on a universal level, and it'll take days before you stop feeling unclean from it. And for those who are gonna say wait for the rest of the show to come out, fuck that. I only watched the first 2 episodes, and that's all I need to get a clear understanding of what Velma is. A malicious, tasteless show that spends every single second of its runtime letting you know just how thoroughly it hates you. Fuck this show, and fuck Mindy Kaling. Good day. Thanks for checking out my review. If you liked what you saw here and would like to support me, check out my Patreon in the description. Every little bit helps, and I always appreciate those who support my work. Until next time, stay cool.